Okay, gonna make a quick video here going over how tournament brackets work and how you should think to understand them, because I think a lot of people sort of uh, take the wrong conclusions from them, and it might drive you crazy, but it drives me crazy to see people, I feel like, make some weird conclusions from them, and so I just wanted to explain my thought process on them. Okay, so in a single elimination tournament, there's 8 people starting out, and there's no like prior seeding where you don't know who the strongest people in the tournament are, and that's kind of the purpose of the tournament, right? Is to try and figure out who the strongest of those 8 people are. At a single elimination tournament, it does not do that. First up, so single elimination tournaments are bad for doing this. But so if, let's say, you're going in, you all don't know how good the other members of the bracket are, or how good each of the head-to-head matchups stack up against each other are. Well, let's say you make semifinals, you win your round 1 matchup. Okay, you could have been playing the 8th seed, right? So now all you know is that you're the 7th seed. Does that make sense so far? You don't know whether you beat the number, like you could be the number 2 seed and you beat a 3 seed, but you don't know that because you don't know the strength of all the head-to-head matchups yet. You're going in with like an unknown blank slate where you don't have a preconceived idea of how strong any of the people are, and that's like the purpose of the tournament, is to hopefully try and figure that out. But as we'll see, this doesn't do that very well. So you are now at best, or at worst, I should say, the 7th seed. At worst, you're the 7th seed. You're not going to be the 8th seed because then you couldn't have won your round 1 matchup, in theory. So you're at worst the 7th seed, right? So now these guys over here, if this was a 7 versus 8, then this is like a 6 versus 5. So, or rather, the 5 seed is going to make it out of that. So then if you win your semifinal matchup, you might now be at worst the 5 seed. Whereas over here, this might be a 1 versus 2, and then the 1 makes it out of there, and this might be a 3 versus 4, and the 3 makes it out of there, and then the 1 makes it over here. And now you're a 1 versus 5, and now the 1 makes it here. But depending on how the bracket works out, maybe the 1 underperforms, and now you're the 5. In one matchup, the round 1 underperforms, and so based on the other teams that got knocked out on the way to the finals, you can actually have somebody that's a 5 seed, and that just makes 1 upset in the finals. They now look like the best team. But if you actually run these matchups over and over and over again, and instead you're not taking into account this one team underperforming, then this team shouldn't be the 1 seed, right? Like, this team should be the 5 seed, because in the other times that you expect to run this bracket, if you run this bracket 100 times or something, maybe the 5 seed only actually wins in the finals 5% of those brackets, right? Whereas in 80 of them, the number 1 seed wins the bracket. So obviously that's a very simple, just like simplification of how this works. It's not strictly true in that way. I'm making that very simple for an explanation. It gets a bit more complicated than that. Okay, so that's, keep in mind, that's assuming until the finals that every higher seed always beats a lower seed. Okay? That the matchups are 100-0 in favor of the higher seed, which is not true. So what actually happens is that if you look at this, and let's say this matters a lot more for things like card games, where the win matchups aren't as favored as MOBAs or something like that. So I knew this mostly from when I played Hearthstone and things like that. But in Hearthstone, for example, if you're a good player in Hearthstone in a tournament of other good players, your win rate is still about 50%, basically. If you're the best player in the tournament, at a Hearthstone tournament, and it's like a pro-level tournament, you probably have, instead of a 50% win rate against all the other teams, players or whatever, you maybe have like a 60% win rate, okay? So basically what that means is, if you win your semifinal matchup, there's a 40% chance that the other guy was better than you, and that you just got a statistical upset. But that's true of all the semifinals. So that can actually happen multiple times in the semifinals, and then you have 2 lower people going against each other. And so you can be the best player in the tournament, and there's a 40% chance that you get knocked out in round 1, basically. But let's assume that you go on and you win, and you're still 60-40 against this other semifinal matchup. Well, now there's a 40% chance after the first 60% chance that you go out in the semifinals, even though you can assume all these other matchups are 50-50, right? Like, you're 60-40. Actually, here, let's do it this way to make this easier on people. You can assume all the other matchups are 50-50. Like, it doesn't matter until they run into you, and then they drop down to 60-40 in your favor. So it doesn't matter what these are. I guess in that case they'll be 40. So there's a 40% chance you get knocked out in round 1. Then there's a 60% chance of the 60% time that you move on, 40% of that, so you do 0.6 times 0.4, so there's now another 24% chance. This is amount of that this should total to 100% in the end is what the way I'm doing this. That you get knocked out in the semifinals, even though you are objectively the best player in the tournament. Okay. Then same thing again in the finals, where of the okay, so now we need to do 60 minus 24 because I'm dumb and I can't do math. 36. So of the 36% of the time that you moved on to this now, 40% of that 36, so you do 0.36 times 0.4. 14% of the time here, you'll lose in the finals. And if I do 0.36 minus 0.14. So if you are objectively the best player in the tournament, 22% of the time, you'll win the finals, I think is how that works out. Let me double check this math. 22 plus 14 plus 24 plus 40. Yeah, that works out. Okay. So if you are objectively the best player in the tournament, there's only a 22% chance that you win the finals, okay? It's not even more than 50% that you actually win the finals of a tournament like this. If you are objectively the best player in the tournament, and you have a 10% win margin, or actually a 20% net win margin over every single opponent that you face, okay? There's only a 22% chance that you're the actual winner of the tournament, okay? So a single elimination tournament in a tournament structure where there's very few matchups, and the, like, margin of victory, or the likelihood, the probability of victory for the being the better seed versus your opponent isn't that large. It's not 100-0, right? It's only 60-40, which it probably is in most realistic competitive level games or whatever. If this is only 55-45 or something, your chances get even worse, okay? So what this means is, if you have a tournament like this, and you're the winner of the tournament, there's a 78% chance that you were not the best person in the tournament. Okay? Right? Doesn't this seem a little insane and bad to you? Because this format is bad at actually giving you the winner of a tournament. If you then do this as double elimination, this chance that you're the actual best player in the tournament goes up significantly. I'm not going to do the math right now. You could do the math. But, like, the point is, double elimination is way better for actually giving you the eventual winner of the tournament as being the best player in the tournament. Single elimination does this extremely poorly, where less than a quarter of the time will that actually be true. Okay? So, you might be the best player of the tournament, and you might have gotten knocked out in finals. And there's a 14% chance. You might be the best player in the tournament, and you got knocked out in semifinals. That's actually more likely than you actually being the best person in the tournament if you're the winner. If you win. One of these other teams is more likely to actually be the best person in the tournament. And same is true of the round of 8. Depending on how you assume the probability of victory is for that person. Okay? So what this means is, you can't really take a whole lot of conclusion off of, this guy is obviously the 1 seed. No, that's obviously not true. There's only a 22% chance he's the 1 seed. Realistically, the probability is he is most likely in the upper half of the players or teams or whatever. It's probably pretty likely that he's either a 1, 2, or 3 seed or something. But, like, you can't say for a fact that they are the 1 seed and that the results support that, because the results actually support the opposite. Okay, that's why this drives me insane. Is because you can't say that off of results. You need to see much more sample size of the matchups in order to get a better breakdown of this. So once you have more matchups going on and you see what the percentages are, like maybe in the first round matchup, you see, here, let's do it this way. You see this guy beat this guy instead of 60-40. Maybe he wins when they do the matchup like 80-20. Like they play 10 games or whatever, he wins 8 games. Then you say, okay, maybe this isn't like a 3 versus a 4 seed. Maybe this is closer to like a 2 versus a 7 seed, right? And then you can get a bit better of a breakdown based on their actual win percentage and things like that. It helps a little bit if you're doing either best of threes or best of fives. You can get a little bit more than that. It also depends on, okay, you're a number 2 versus a number 7 seed. If you do a best of 3, how often is the 7 seed expected to take one game from you? How often is the number 2 seed expected to 2-0? How often is it that the number 7 seed actually wins 2-0 or wins 2-1 over the number 2 seed, and that's an upset? Okay, you need to know all of those percentages and have the breakdown of those percentages to actually be able to draw a conclusion. Because if those percentages don't line up with this being a 2 and a 7, maybe this is actually a 3 and a 7, and maybe this one is a 2 and a 4, right? Maybe this guy isn't the 2 seed, and maybe this guy wasn't the 3 seed. Maybe these are actually a closer matchup, so maybe it swaps back, right? Like, you have to know all these matchups against each other in order to actually be able to draw the correct conclusion for a power ranking type thing, okay? Hopefully that explained that good enough. It's way more complicated than this, but yeah, basically that's why single elimination tournaments are bad. You can't draw conclusions based on who wins the tournament, and you actually need to know what the probability is of victory and what the expected like strengths. This all comes back to like MMR and like expected win rate probabilities for like elo ratings and stuff like that. It's all very similar. Where if you're the better team, you're not ever going to be expected to win 100-0 in that matchup, basically. Maybe if you're like super favored, and your rankings are, in that case, you basically either shouldn't, you probably shouldn't even be playing in the same tournament if it's actually 100-0, is kind of the gist of what I'm saying. Anyway, that's all I got.